My name is Christa Harmon. I am Shayla Harmon's mom, and she is in recovery from opioid use disorder. I found out when she was in her early 20s, right after the birth of her son, and it changed my world. When you're a mom and you find out anything is wrong with a child, you do everything you can to fix it. And unfortunately, you can't fix drug use. It all kind of made sense once I found out, because things wasn't adding up. The way she was acting, she was avoiding people. She wouldn't return phone calls to family. She wouldn't come to family functions. So I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. And once I finally found out what it was, it all made sense. But then you go into this, where did I go wrong? What did I do? I taught her the difference between right and wrong. I taught her that drugs were bad, but she's still in this mess. I didn't know what drugs she was using at first, so that made it even more terrifying. I honestly thought it was meth, because meth was the big drug around here for years. So I never, ever imagined it was heroin. And when I found out it was heroin, I was like, where did this come from? Why are we talking about heroin? This is not a country drug. This is a city drug. And it was a very serious addiction to heroin. It was right after the first overdose in Sullivan. Then that was the first thing that it was in my mind. I'm like, you're gonna die. You're gonna die of an overdose. And I'll never forget it. We were sitting at the table and she says, Mom, I'm not gonna overdose because I've got this. And I said, how do you have this? I said, this is a drug. You can't control the drug. So then I would talk to her about rehab. And I don't need rehab. I can do this on my own. And it wasn't very long after some legal troubles started. More legal troubles, more arrests. Every time I turned around, it was a phone call. Mom, I'm in jail, bail me out. I bailed her out once, and that was it. However, my parents bailed her out several times. I didn't want her in jail, but at least I knew she wasn't using drugs when she was in jail. So it progressed over several years. And it wasn't a long time span, but it seems like a lifetime, because all my focus was on her and my grandson and what they were doing, where they were going, how they were doing it. And then DFS was called. There was a hotline, and I became foster grandma to my grandson, so he was living with me. And my daughter did really good for a while following their safety plan, and I was happy. And she went to rehab, and she did the steps that she needed to do, and it was great. And when she came back from rehab, she had another court date with Children's Division, and they gave her custody of her son back because she did everything she needed to do. And a week later, she overdosed. I will never forget that night, ever, as long as I live. We went to a family function during the day, and everything was great. I mean, it was like old times. It was like having my old Shayla back, when she was younger. And that evening, my husband had taken our youngest son fishing, so he was gone. My middle son, it was the week of graduation, so he was out doing senior stuff. And we were sitting there, Shayla and my grandson was in their bedroom, and I was watching TV, and I heard a thump. And I sat there and I was like, what was that? So I played it in my mind, and I'm like, she just moved something and it made a loud noise, and no big deal. And I sat there a little bit longer, and I could hear my grandson saying, Mommy, get up. Mommy falled. And as soon as I heard that Mommy falled, I knew what happened. And I went down the hall, tried to open the door, and I couldn't open the door. She had actually fell and lodged herself between the wall and the door, and I couldn't open it. So I pried the door open, and there she was, laying on the floor. Her lips were blue. She was making this god-awful gurgling sound, and I seen the needle. So I knew immediately what had happened. And I dialed 911, and the EMS, I told him immediately, I said, my daughter overdosed. And he said, start rescue CPR. And I said, I don't know CPR. And poor guy, he was so great on the phone, and I'm sitting here screaming at him. I had it on speaker, and I was screaming because I was afraid he couldn't hear me. And he walked me through doing CPR. And I did the best I could, and I felt like I wasn't doing it good enough because I didn't know what I was doing. So that was in my mind. And then the ambulance came, and I remembered my door was locked, so they couldn't get in. So I had to stop CPR to go let them in, which terrified me even more because I wasn't breathing for my daughter. It's okay. So when the EMS came in, they immediately gave her Narcan. My son got home while all the chaos was going on. He actually got my grandson out of his crib because he witnessed the whole thing. Sorry.
It's okay.
So he took my grandson outside. The EMS worked on Shayla. They gave her Narcan, and she started to come to, but it wasn't enough for them to feel comfortable. So they gave her more Narcan, and then she started to come to, and she was very combative when she came out of it, and I felt horrible for, her, the way she acted, but that's sometimes what happens. And they took her to the hospital, and I turned into a switch flipped in my mind. I couldn't stop the overdose, but I can stop it from happening again in this time span. So I told the officer, I said I want a 96-hour mandatory hold. She got out of the hospital a couple days later. She had some other health issues going, so she was held for the whole 96 hours. And we started talking about rehab again. And it was basically, no, I got this. I know what I did wrong. I know what happened. And I said, well, I hope so, because I can't do this again. So then things went as normal. The drug use continued. It didn't stop. She would take off and be gone for days at a time, and she would take her son, which made me a nervous wreck because she overdosed once. Would she overdose again with him in the car? Where would he be? Where would he go? So me being me, I bought a GPS tracker, and I put it on her car. And I could track her wherever she went as long as the GPS tracker had charge. So I kept it a secret for a long time, but then she took my grandson one day, and I knew where she was going, and I had to stop it. So I sent her a text message. I said, if you proceed going to where you're going with your son, I will call the police. You are not taking him where you're going. And Shayla was dumbfounded. How do you know where I'm going? I'm not going anywhere. I said, you are on this road, and you are going to this location. I know where you're going. I followed you there before. So if you take your son there, expect the police. So she turned around, and she brought her son back to me, and I said, now if you want to go, you go, but you're not taking him. So I sought legal guardianship, and that was not as hard of a process as what I thought it was going to be, because you have to have parents that contest it, and with them using the drugs and everything, it just went through. So I do have legal guardianship of my grandson, and Shayla continued a very, very rough path for the next several months. And I didn't know exactly where she was. I knew she was in Owensville, and I knew that she was alive. But other than that, I didn't know anything. I had friends keeping tabs on her for me, and they would tell me, when they would see her and let me know, and then, I kept my distance because I knew if I went, it would just set things off. So then one day I got a phone call in October from a relative saying that they had just seen Shayla, and it looks like she had been beaten up very bad. So I went and I talked to her, and I talked her into pressing charges and took her to the police department knowing she had warrants out for her arrest. I was a horrible person because now she's going to go to jail again. And I said, but at least you'll be alive. And right now that's all I care about. So she went to jail and she sat there. And it, you know, more charges kept coming and more charges and more charges and more charges. And I said, just, you know, enough is enough. You know, it's time. It's time to, you know, face reality, and this is what's happening. This is where your life is leading you. So you have to make the choice and you have to make the decision to change your course, because right now you're going to wind up dead. And I would rather see you in jail than dead. She went to prison, and then as all these other charges came up, I told her, I said, just plead guilty. I said, don't fight it. You did this. So just plead guilty, serve your time, and when you're done, you're done. You know, and then you can start life over and be a new person, be who you're meant to be. So she did. She served her time, held her head up high, and, you know, that was in 2017, and she was released. And I'm happy to say that she has been in recovery ever since. She has not touched drugs, and I'm thankful for that, not only for me, but for her son, because now her son can get to know his mom, and she can be the mom that she's meant to be and have a life. Since Shayla has been in recovery, we are closer than we were, which is a godsend. However, we will never be as close as we once were when she was a teenager. I love her, she loves me, we're mother-daughter, she's got my back, I got her back. That'll never change. But it is different. She's different. She's my daughter, she'll always be my daughter, but she's different. And I'm different. So to have, we're very close. But to be what we once were, that I don't know if we'll ever get that back. I will go to the end of the world for my daughter, no question asked. And I am beyond words proud of where she was to where she is today. And no one or nothing can ever take that away, because she is a warrior and she's a rock star, coming from the brink of death to being in recovery today. So that speaks volumes to me, and I can't love her anymore. I mean, I love her to infinity and beyond. You know, it's changed my life, because I was looking forward to, you know, being a grandma and enjoying my kids out of school and all of that. But now I've started over, and it's reality. Unfortunately, it's a consequence of drug use, and, you know, I'm not the only one it's happened to. Unfortunately, there's a lot more of us out there than, you know, that is actually known. I went to battle, and I was ready to battle. Back in April of 2014, I challenged the city of Solomon. I said, if you want to do something about it, you show up this day and we're going to walk. And over 200 people showed up for that first walk. And at that point, I was like, wow, we got something here. Their story's not over yet. And until they breathe their last breath, there is hope for anybody who suffers from substance use disorder. And I believe that wholeheartedly, and I'll never stop believing that. And they are all people, and they're all someone. And they're not the labels that society labels them as, because they have a heart, they have blood, and they have a life. And when you have those, you are worth fighting for. And